Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Another unique presentation today, something we haven't done before. We've been doing a series on Parkinson's. Basically, we started with a description from Dr. S, and then we went on to some personal interviews, one of which was of Rick Shapiro, a well known, very popular stand up comic who has Parkinson's. And it was pretty graphic on the show that we did. If you saw it, you could see the dramatic changes and in the way he presented himself. So we've invited Rick's lovely wife, Tracy, because Rick has just had a surgical procedure. And we've talked about summer remedies, by the way. We did a whole show on rock steady boxing, talking about how effective that has been and is on treating symptoms of Parkinson's. So welcome back, Tracy. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Thank you.
Anyway, we were talking a little bit earlier about the physical effects. So tell us, for those people who haven't actually seen the podcast, what it was like before the surgical procedure.
Well, so Rick's has the newest form of medication for Parkinson's. He has what's called Vyalev. But prior to Vyalev, he had Duopa. And, before the Duopa, he was taking 2 tablets every 3 hours and only receiving about 20 minutes of, active time. So you're saying, so between those 3 hours, you get 20 minutes, and that just wasn't effective. And if we stop the medication completely, the oral medication, he's completely wheelchair bound. He would be considered stage 4 Parkinson's. So at that point, you're being fed, you're being dressed, all of your daily activities are, through some sort of support, household support. Now that we have the second version called Vyalev, he got it put in. It's interesting because this is subcutaneous, and he got it put in at 10 a.m. and by 1:30 he was on a scooter, electric scooter.
Wow. How long was the effect? How long did it last?
Well, this is a 24-hour machine. So the Duopa, which is the first one, is about maybe a 5 to 7 pound device that goes, either around your neck or around your waist. And again, 24 hours. So you're getting 24 hours of activity. And the same thing for the Vyalev. He's getting 24 hours of active movement. The only problem is that, we're trying to create the balance of movement without mania. And that's where the balance comes in. And so if we lower it too much, it's ineffective. If we raise it too much, he is manic. So we're trying to, find that. Was that me? Is that noise me? Do you hear that feedback?
No.
Oh, okay. So what I was saying is that if, we're just trying to create that balance so he doesn't go manic and he still has activity. And if it works, it's 24/7.
So how long have you been using that?
We got that installed on June 7, I think. June
Oh, so
7. It was very relevant. So we had the first one, which is the Duopa, installed in December of 2023. The next version was the Vyalev, and that was just installed recently, about 2 months ago.
when you say installed, how do you mean that?
Well, I do say installed. It's a subcutaneous. It's very similar to a diabetic insulin pump that gets put onto someone's arm. You're filling it with the medication, and then you have a cannula that gets, how do I say it? Goes into his skin and disperses the medication.
Okay, so it's not like injections.
No, but it is a syringe. It is a syringe.
Okay.
The first one, the Duopa, was actually a tube that went from the outside of his body past his stomach, so internal, past his stomach to the intestines, the larger intestines, and then the medicine would go that way. So they're hoping with this new device that the medicine will deliver with greater access.
Deal with both sides of it, or some and some of the other?
Say
Is
that one
it
more time, please.
the new intravenous, I guess, is it a combination of the old medication and the new?
Well, you know what? When you look at it, the Violev box is significantly lighter. The medicine comes in a small clear vial. It's you're putting a syringe into a dispersion device. So that's very different from the other one, which is attaching to your body, which it kind of looks like a feeding tube. And the medicine itself is a milky looking medicine, and the device is much heavier.
So you only use one now, right?
Right. Now we're only using the Violev. They kept it on. They're keeping it on for they're keeping the access point for the Duopa on for 3 months to see if we like this one better, and then they will remove that internal tube.
The first one.
Yeah.
So I'll just have the one Vix, the last one.
Yeah. Well, I know we want it to be easy. You know. Like maybe I'm spoiled, but I want him at his best, and I want him to have mobility, to be able to do certain things for himself. In the household, more private, private activities like showering, stuff like that. If the medicine is going to give him that ability, then that's great. And hopefully, as time progresses, we will get better medicine that is easier to access. And even for a person with Parkinson's, to be able to attach it to themselves without having, their wife or a support person do it for them.
I'm just wondering why I never heard of this.
Oh, you know what? I'm aggressive. And my husband is Rick Shapiro, and I want him on stage, and I want him doing podcasts, and I want him doing interviews. And without me really going to the lengths of trying to find what's next, what's coming, is there stem cell coming? What are our options to keep him living? Because his heart is good, his blood is good, his cholesterol is good. He just has Parkinson's. And that, quite frankly, is not a reason for me, for him to not constantly be pushing for the best and the newest.
Well, compare what we saw when we did the last podcast, which is probably about 6 weeks ago or so, and it was pretty obvious that some of the symptoms were very obvious. How has that changed between then and now?
Well, I want to address that because, each person's Parkinson's is unique to the individual. And each person's Parkinson's is going to be, increased side effects based upon surroundings or environment. My husband, when he has anything that's stressful, he will have more physical motion. When he's with me on the couch watching a movie, peaceful, less movement, as far as tremors or anything like that. But as soon as there's some outside stress, his body's going to react. Will we be able to control that with the medication? I don't know. One thing I say to many people when I talk to them about this disease is that there are 5 steps in getting well. And it is not just the medication. It's nutrition, exercise, low stress, sleep, and then the medication. And if you're not able to manage those other 4, the medicine is only going to work a certain amount. So I felt that the interview, even though there is no stress, there's no stress in talking to you. There's no stress in doing something that we've done 1,000 times internationally. We've done this 1,000 times. He announced that he had Parkinson's on the radio. So this should not have been stressful. but it's something that just caused him to have a side effect that day.
Well, it's very easy to tell people not to have stress. I mean,
Oh,
that's part of life,
right, right.
And I think you're probably right that stress exacerbates whatever the condition may have been, because I think it's true that if you're quiescent and you're just hanging out and you're not being stressed, so to speak, you're going to be better. Would you agree with that?
100%, 100%. He could be sitting on the couch peaceful with me, and then he gets a phone call from someone, and it just upsets him, and all the symptoms come out, and he has to go back and meditate, which is very important to his wellness, and just try to get through it.
I was just going to ask you about meditation.
A
Does
hundred
that?
percent. 100%. Rick Shapiro, many people will, I know you're not familiar with his past, but Rick Shapiro was a 2-pack of unfiltered cigarettes with 6 or 7, maybe 20 espressos a day. Lived off of 3 pierogies, and he was just a wild man. There was no calming him down, and there was no meditation. There was nothing like that. But now it's a different game. And in order to, find some level of success in his life, meditation is a part of it.
Any particular form of meditation? Uh, there's a lot of things on
Um,
the
you
market,
know,
obviously.
yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time on YouTube, and there's a couple of them. That one is I Love God. My husband was never religious. I don't know if he's become religious or if he's become spiritual, or if just the words of loving another entity can create peace in him. That's good for me.
Fantastic, because we really want the public. That's one of the reasons, in fact, the main reason why we do these podcasts to begin with. This is not about a money making enterprise. This is about sharing information and guidance. And the more we can tell the public that's available to them that they're not aware of, the better it's going to be. And
A hundred
so,
percent. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but there's another form of exercise. So you mentioned rock steady, or someone mentioned rock steady, which
I
is
did.
great, which is great. But have you ever heard of big and loud?
No, I haven't. What
Big
is that?
Big and loud is one of the first forms of exercise or physical therapy created for Parkinson's people, where you're doing these large motions and you're doing this large voice to keep yourself from going into the cocoon. That's what I call it. Wake up and you're just cocoon. So, if you're saying like big, loud, and you're working those muscles and you're working that body, and you're creating what does they call that, a muscle memory, so that you're able to do a big step forward, a large reach to get a cup of coffee, to continue. It's actually, if you were to go to Google, it would be lsvt.com or .org, or you do a Google search for big and loud. It's outstanding. It's a 4-day a week, I think, for 4 weeks, and you're constantly doing these motions, repetition per se.
Well, actually, on Rocksteady Boxing's agenda is shouting out also. Your
Yep.
voice is affected. In fact, my voice sounds different today than it sounded earlier this week. It
Right.
comes and goes. And that's one of the symptoms, as well as head bobbing. And today it's much better than it has been in the past. So it comes and goes like everything else. But the reality is that shouting, counting, basically what we do is we count. In other words, if you're doing a particular exercise, we start at 10, 9, 8, go down. That's what we do with the length of the particular exercise. We do that a lot. And in terms of movement, I'm not trying to denigrate big and loud. I'm just saying,
Oh
I only
no.
know from our side, but the reality here is we also do a lot of large movements. In fact, at the end of every session, we do what we call a stretch. and that's basically putting your arm over here. It's just basically, I think it's almost like Pilates, and it's
Well,
the
you know
same
what?
kind of thing.
We've done both. We've done both, and I encourage both. Just the only thing about some of the programs, either one, is that they might not be available in your community. So being able to, so let's say Rocksteady isn't available in your community and you're not driving, asking your doctor, what's my option? They might say big and loud because it's covered by Medicaid. Transportation is covered by covered by Medicare. Transportation is covered by Medicare, and all these things as an alternative.
Well, just so you know, Rocksteady Boxing has 950 locations, number one. But more important than that is that Lisa Oliver, who happens to be my coach, does a Zoom. And his Zoom is very, very good. You don't have to go any place other than sit in front of your computer. So
That's good. Is she charging?
it's the same part of the membership in Rocksteady Boxing. It's very minimal, really. I
Right,
can't imagine how they
right,
make any money.
right.
But
I
I don't know the answer to that question, but I would assume that it's like going to a regular class, same price, and it's really very minimal.
right, right. But minimal is relative,
Of
and some
course.
people, some people can. This is another. I mean, I can go off on another topic, but there's no support for Parkinson's people in their day-to-day activities. So, Michael J. Fox is doing research, but they're not giving any money to the people that aren't working. And so minimal is relative. If the doctor gives a prescription, then they're getting another form of exercise.
Well, we're hoping to work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, number one. And number two, it's very, very in its nascent condition. We're trying to work out a system where the Rocksteady Boxing program is promoted within the legal system, and lawyers would be recommending patients who have perhaps been subjected to something like paraquat to be able to get assistance from programs like Rocksteady Boxing. And so it helps the person, it helps Rocksteady Boxing, and it does a really good public service because these people are getting paid. It takes, like you said, sometimes you don't get attention, sometimes you don't want attention, but sometimes you do, and especially if you're a foundation or a research organization, and hopefully that things like we're doing right now, whether it's Rocksteady Boxing or medical aspects or meditation, because we had people on the show that also talked about the spiritual side, and they do make a big difference. There's a lot to be said that it's mind over matter, and using the right techniques that work for you, of course, makes an enormous difference in your life. It could change the quality of your life, and that's what
100%.
we're shooting to. That's what we're shooting to do, and that's why I invited you back. I didn't know. I heard that Rick had surgery, and I said, surgery? I heard that they were doing something with the brain and whatever. And I checked. My son is a physician, and I checked with him, and he says, yeah, there's a surgical procedure, but it's not really.
Well, that's called that's the DBS.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. The phone was ringing.
That's okay. That's DBS, and that is a surgical procedure that goes into the brain with certain electrodes. Rick was not a candidate for that because he has hallucinations. So the doctor that we would have used to do that is at Cedars, Dr. Tagliotti, and he's the gentleman that wrote Parkinson's for Dummies, and he's the second doctor that helped us very early in our journey with Parkinson's. Now, I have a question for you.
Okay, I'll try to answer it, but I may not have enough knowledge to do that.
I bet you don't. Have you ever heard of something called the JIMO Act?
No. Never heard of it.
The JIMO Act, JIMMO Act. The JIMO Act was passed to help people that have neurologically declining or disintegrating health matters, such as Parkinson's. And what it does is it will cover your physical therapy until the day you die. Because although you're doing physical therapy and it gets you to a level that you're well, that's where most physical therapy agencies will cut you off, say, oh, you're all better now. The GMO Act allows it to go on because you'll never, the person will never get rid of the disease. The problem is that there's a disconnect. Most physical therapy agencies have never heard of it, and the government isn't talking about it. So it was very interesting because, I have him in physical therapy all the time, and they go to cut him off. I said, you can't cut him off. The federal government has passed this act, and they still do. So I'm actually trying to get in touch with Dr. Oz and RFK to talk about these items.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Look, I interviewed Robert Kennedy on a podcast a while ago, and the reality is that he's looking to solve problems like this. And I think maybe we're on the right track now in terms of research. You just don't ever know, because you're talking about things that we couldn't have talked about it a year ago or 2 years ago. So progress is being made. In fact, what's interesting is I was watching 60 Minutes the other day, and they were talking about AI. There's certainly is an upside, but there's also a risky, scary, frightening downside. But the doctor who was on there, they asked him the question if we could someday solve all medical issues, in other words, cure everything. And his answer was he thinks it'll be done within the next 10 years. And it makes a lot of sense. When they can use the computer to figure out waves and things like that, then certainly there's a way to progress to robots doing it or whatever they use. So when people say you can't be cured, I don't buy it. I don't think anybody else should buy it either, because they didn't think you could ever cure measles, although that's back now. But they said you couldn't cure polio or anything, but they did, and they will. You got to be optimistic, and that's why you can't sit around and moan. I've looked at it, and it's been a very difficult road for me in terms of acceptance of it. When I first was diagnosed, I was kind of glum about it and whatever, but I've decided I'm going to keep on going. I'm cognitively, thankfully, it's had made no difference. In fact, I'm still working on cases, now that I'm retired from the bench. And the reality is a lot of it has to do with attitude. And if there are physical limitations, there are physical limitations. People will accept you for who you are. And if you are nodding your head or whatever, that's part of who you are. It's like when you saw Rick on the show like 6 weeks ago. You see what you see right now, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a person in there, and that person in there wants to be like everybody else. And if there's a methodology to get there, and we're shooting for it, and there's a methodology to do it, we want to do it. And we are making progress. And for people to say it's a fatality at the end of the day, that's not healthy thinking. And it's all about what we call cause and effect. What you're thinking in your subconscious mind, your spiritual side, is ultimately what's going to manifest. And time just separates the cause from the effect. And if you think you're feeling better and you are feeling better, you will be better. And it's really part of the process. It's everything you do in life, actually. If you create a good situation, good situations will happen. Do the right thing, good things, right place, right time. Don't do right things, steal, and do those kinds of things. Wrong place, wrong time. So I'm delighted to hear that Rick is making great progress. How's he doing?
He's doing good. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard Rick's identical twin passed away.
No, I didn't
So
know that.
yeah, so his identical twin passed away. He was in great health. There was nothing wrong with him. So Rick's just he's quiet. He's just quiet right now. And of course, that's his mourning period, and we'll get through that just as we've gotten through everything. May I ask you when you were diagnosed? What year?
I don't really remember. It's been about 6 years.
That's 6 years.
Yeah,
So 2000.
I'm doing rock steady boxing now 3 years, and I
Okay.
had it. I had it for a while before I started with that program. And it's interesting. My wife saw an ad in our local throwaway paper talking about part. It caught her attention. It was rock steady boxing, free first tryout. I went. I liked it. I'm still there. So, strange things happen. People show up in your life for a reason. You find things to read or phone calls or whatever. It's all of it is for a reason. And if you pay attention, you can learn a whole lot. Because I've heard people say often that the challenges that you have in your life, at the end of the day, are really lessons in advance. And if you pick up what the message is, it doesn't have to happen again. So the reality is attitude makes a big difference. And so you got a great attitude. And I can tell from the first time we talked, and you're devoted and dedicated and smart. And I wish you all the very, very best. And tell Rick that I hope that we'll have him on the show so he can do a stand-up routine for us and maybe entertain the audience instead of listening to blowhards like me. So anyway, thank you very much, Tracy, and it's good to
Thank
see you
you.
again. Be well.
All right. Be well. Thank you.